So now we are going to have some fun with this. We had so much fun the other day exploring political economy, as you guys can say. So, anyways, guys, I'm going to just very quickly play with the settings, make sure all the settings are correct. And today, we're going to do a really cool exploration into some of the things I've always wanted to explore. So, let me turn on live chat replay. Let me turn on all the stuff needed. And then we will get started. Let's turn on. Anyways, guys, welcome. For those of you tuning in, last live stream I did spontaneously. We looked at certain things about the world that I've always wanted to look at again. So that's what we're going to do again today. Today's exploration is on Ben Bernanke versus Milton Friedman. Why? I guess the question is why? Why am I so interested in this stuff? Well, because I studied this stuff in college, and I always felt like there not just were, there is more to study and learn about. So that's what we're gonna do today. And here we go. Let's get started. So one of the things to notice right now is that you can tell this is a dated reading, right? He's no longer president. This dude messed up a lot of things about the world, right? So as much as I identify as someone that's a conservative, I don't think many of us are fond of this guy. But so now you know what era these readings that I don't even know if I read any of these. So a lot of you who I've reflected on my college days, at the end of the semester, because a lot of people weren't really there to learn, despite being an Ivy League school. So people threw away really good stuff like this. So this is stuff from the trash. So the article that I wanted to read today, it's called Ben Bernanke versus Milton Friedman, The Federal Reserve's Emergence as the U.S. Economy Central Planner by Jeffrey Rogers Hummel. And then when I finish reading this, I'll, of course, give you guys the full title and I'll tag him too. But anyways, so I skipped over the very beginning for you guys. I'm not going to read the very beginning, but basically what it said was Milton Friedman and Anna Jacobson Shorts wrote something, and I read this when I was in economics class. Monetary History of the United States, 1867 to 1960. So this inspired Alan Greenspan, Bernanke. Greenspan was the chairman of the Fed under old Bush, new Bush, Clinton. So Greenspan had a really long career. Now, Bernanke came in to replace him, and Bernanke's a Princeton guy. One more thing, guys. In case you guys can't tell, I'm not in my normal spot. I'm actually doing a chess tournament tomorrow. So I'm visiting my parents and doing a chess tournament. So it's very stuffy. There's like a tropical storm going around. So it's really stuffy. I'm like not used to this weather, even though technically it's better for your skin. But for live streaming, it's making me sweat. But anyways, if you notice, it's a different environment. But for some reason, every time I visit my parents, I guess I get more intellectual. So obviously, you guys know I work on other things. I don't really work on this channel anymore. But sometimes I miss the intellectual pursuits. So here we go. All right. Conflicting lessons of the Great Depression. The banking panics associated with the Great Depression were not only the worst in the history of the United States, but also the largest in the history of the world. The differences between Bernanke and Friedman center on why those panics generated economic catastrophe. So this is very interesting, right? From what I understand, what I recall about what Milton Friedman wrote about the Great Depression, after all the stuff crashed and everything, banks weren't willing to loan out stuff. So monetary policy, as they say, was too tight. So, if I want to start my own business again after the economy's going south, I want to take out money for whatever, I can't, right? That's not going to help the economy recover. So that's my understanding of what Friedman said. But again, we'll see what they say. For Friedman and Shorts, the causal mechanism was the resulting changes in the money stock, and therefore in the equilibrium price level. A lot of you guys who've studied economics know price is probably one of the buzzwords you hear, right? Price is a signal Price tells you the value, the demand, the everything of whatever. So prices are one of those things, especially people who are not for government intervention into the economy. What they'll argue a lot of times is that you mess with the prices. So just keep that in mind. Pricing is something you'll always hear an economist talk about. The panics brought about a collapse of the broader measures of the money stock over the 4 years from 1929 to 1933. A one-third fall in M2 and a one-fourth fall in M1. So this is like macroeconomics. M1 is basically all the available money you can spend right now. M2 is the money that you have and the money you can take out very quickly. So that's just a little bit. So some people call M2 near money. So according to Friedman and Shorts, from 1929 to 1933, M2 fell one-third and M1 fell one-fourth. Anyways, guys, for those of you tuning in right now, since I know it takes a while for YouTube to alert people, I promised you guys in my last live stream that I wanted to bring to you guys a whole exploration into the 2007 to 2009 financial crisis, because I had all these readings from macroeconomics class in college that I kept, and I went to college around the time of the financial crisis. So today I was looking through my readings because I left the 2 New Yorker articles at home in Santa Monica, and I realized that there's so much to explore, and I have a chess tournament going on tomorrow, so I don't want to keep studying chess. I want to just go in there tomorrow. Everything I already have synthesized, right? Don't cram. That's not good for the brain. So I'm like, what can I do to keep my brain busy but also relaxed? And I find this stuff, if you approach this stuff with a really fun attitude, it's actually quite relaxing despite it being a dense political economy. But anyways, that's why I'm exploring this stuff, and we're definitely going to learn some stuff from this. So any of you who want more economic, political philosophy, any of that stuff, you guys are going to be in for a treat. Anyways, this collapse, this as in the 1929 to 1933, this collapse induced, in their view, there as in Milton Friedman and Anna Schwartz, a further fall in money's velocity, or in what is the same thing, an increase in the portfolio demand for money, requiring an enormous contraction in nominal income. Without full and immediate flexibility of all prices and wages, a one-third contraction in the economy's real output was the consequence. In other words, Friedman conceives of the bank panics as an enormous shock to aggregate demand. I might still have my economics books. If not, I'll draw this later. Aggregate demand is a macroeconomics term. Basically, all the demand in the economy. This analysis leaves unanswered the prior questions of what triggered the banking panics in the first place, and why the U.S. banking system was so uniquely vulnerable after so much government intervention to prevent such a crisis. So this wasn't I'm trying to explain what my confusion is to you guys. What time period are they talking about? I guess I'm writing this down right now. I assume they mean like post Great Depression. Not very clear. This is bad writing. Like I saw them because they're talking about Friedman talking about the Great Depression, but then they're talking about government intervention to prevent such a crisis. So much government intervention. I didn't know there was a lot of government intervention pre Great Depression. So what time period? It's like so much of reading is interacting with it. Friedman and Shorts attribute the panics to inept Fed policy. Yep, this is what I was talking about before. Along with legal restrictions on the issue of money substitutes by private clearinghouses. But other economists have come up with myriad alternative explanations, ranging from the Smoot-Hawley tariff to misplaced adherence to the gold standard, or a collapse of Keynesian animal spirits. When I was in college, I actually wrote a paper on the Hoots-Smalley tariff. Basically, Herbert Hoover, which many people consider a free market advocate, wasn't actually a free market advocate. He really wanted to increase presidential power to set tariffs. So Congress, to protect, because again, back in the day, didn't understand what tariffs do in the long term. So Congress wanted to pass a tariff. So Hoover, in a really fun compromise, decided, okay, you'll get a tariff if I, as the president and my executive branch, get to set certain tariffs. So they passed the Smoot-Hawley or Hawley-Smoot tariff, and it really messed up the economy more as the stock market crashed. Our economy's doing well. What do? Let's mess up the entire world economy, right? That's what the Smoot-Hawley tariff did. But anyways, I don't think this article wants to talk about this, so we're going to look at what it wants to talk about. Despite disagreement about what initiated the panics, however, there's a fair consensus that the collapse of the banking system, once underway, made the Depression far more severe than it otherwise would have been. Okay, so we're going to obviously talk about the banking sector. Yet, in contrast to Friedman's analysis, Bernanke's major article on the Great Depression, originally published in the American Economic Review, is titled Non-Monetary Effects of the Financial Crisis in the Propagation of the Great Depression. Yeah, I actually read this one too. I don't remember anything from it, and I was looking through my collection. I couldn't find the article, but I do remember reading this. Banks were the economy's premier financial intermediaries, channeling savings from households to firms, which used the savings to maintain and accumulate capital, and to other households engaged in consumption. The failure of more than 9,000 banks caused a massive interruption of the credit flow. And in Bernanke's view, that was the primary reason for the contraction in output and its long duration. Okay. Even in his tribute to Friedman, Bernanke reiterated his belief that during the Great Depression, banking panics contributed to the collapse of output and prices through non-monetary mechanisms by creating impediments to the normal intermediation of credit. At first glance, Bernanke appears to be arguing that the bank panics constituted an enormous shock to aggregate supply and demand, right? Maybe it will help our exploration if I bring you, let's see. Let me see if I have it there. I'll be right back, guys. Let me see if I have the reading so you guys can kind of picture what these people are talking about. Well, guys, I tried. I can't find it. But it would really help. Maybe I'm going to find an image of this for you guys. For those of you tuning in, just reading some of the stuff I never got to read, and I really wanted to share this stuff with you. So we're going to explore some political economy today. Anyways, aggregate supply, aggregate demand. This way, at least, for those of you who've never studied this stuff, you can picture what we're talking about. Let me see if I can find something that, let's see. Economics. We found something from Johns Hopkins. What I want to show you guys is it's a curve that plots them both together. That's what's the most important. There it is. And then there's what's called long range aggregate supply. So it's like you got to look at them all in the context together. And there it is. This is what I'm looking for. So I'm going to share my screen real quickly so you guys have a little image of what we're talking about right here. So this is what they're talking about. So um, there's aggregate demand, the downward sloping one. There's aggregate supply, short range, short-term aggregate supply, and then there's long range aggregate supply. So this is something to keep in mind when you're looking at these readings. So for those of you who've never studied this stuff, this is one of the basics of macroeconomics, and this is some of the basics of Keynesian theory, especially basically how to set the economy right, for lack of a better word. Whether it's something that actually works or not, I don't know, but that's something that's going to be debated for the rest of the time. My pencil just fell. So, okay, I'm going to stop sharing. I'm going to keep going. So, despite this possibility intriguing, he actually develops, especially in subsequent articles, a convoluted explanation of why a banking collapse would instead depress aggregate demand, even without any impact on the money stock. He speculates that such a disruption of what he calls the credit channel, in effect, will induce households and firms to hold more money rather than spend it on consumption and investment. Aha. For those of you who don't know how GDP is calculated, I guess this can be a fun lesson too. Let me see. Let me look at some of the apps. Can I draw? Can I show you guys? Let's look at this notes. So I'm using Zoom to live stream, and then there's docs. There's docs. Look at this. Daily Scrum meeting, brainstorm. Whoa. Okay, like this doesn't help at all. Come on, Zoom. What are you doing? Yeah, sorry. I'm trying to figure out all these new features of Zoom. Maybe I'll just let's see. Maybe I will just open up a Google Sheet or something. Google Doc. So, and then if I really were into this, I should have brought in some of the Austrian economic stuff to kind of compare. But Google Doc. So I'm going to share my screen again. You guys have probably seen this. Right there. So you guys have probably seen this, right? This is how you calculate GDP, so to speak. This is consumption plus investment plus government spending. And then this is net exports. So exports minus imports. The reason why imports is written as M is because you already have an I here with investment. So that's whenever you see anything related to aggregate or GDP, or in this case he talked about consumption and investment, they're using this metric right here, this metric, consumption plus investment plus government spending plus. So a thing that the Austrian School of Economics really criticizes about this way of measuring the economy is that when you're consuming, you're usually not investing, right? Consumption and investment shouldn't be aggregated up like this. So I guess I'll draw what I mean by this. Here we go. We have so many note cards here that have never been used, so finally get to use all this stuff. So anyways, guys, how are you guys doing? Maybe as I open up so many rabbit holes with this exploration, maybe we should just catch up a little. But yeah, for those of you just tuning in, I'm doing a chess tournament in the DC area, so just trying to take a break today, and my head's version of taking a break is exploring economics. So I don't know if you guys can see this. Consumption and investment, right? This is what the Austrian School of Economics would say. And it actually makes sense logically. So if I'm consuming, I can't invest, right? Because the money that I could have used to invest, I'm consuming with it, I'm spending it, right? So consumption and investment are actually sort of, they take away from each other, for lack of a better word. So this is, I think, a better way of thinking about consumption and investment. If I spend a certain amount of money, like if I spend all my money buying stuff, I don't have money to invest. If I spend all my money saving it up, whether in saving funds, bonds, stocks, crypto, or whatever, I don't have any money to spend, right? So you're somewhere along this curve. So this is what the Austrians would say. So, and it's the Austrian School of Economics, not like Austrian people, just to clarify. So let's go back to the article. I never thought I'd bring this stuff up, man. This is really cool. This is really cool. True to his new Keynesian. So basically, this article calls Ben Bernanke new Keynesian. True to his new Keynesian inclinations, what Bernanke is thus saying is that the failure of banks brings about a prolonged negative velocity shock, although he never expresses this idea in such straightforward terms. Although the supply side effects of bank failures would seem to make Bernanke's emphasis on the credit channel more compelling, either avenue clearly posits a mechanism for severe economic dislocations distinct from Friedman and Schwartz's explanation. These two explanations for the Great Depression's severity are admittedly not mutually exclusive. As Bernanke himself has pointed out, financial panics clearly constitute a hit both to the money stock and to financial intermediation. But very different policies are implied depending on which effect is primary. If the danger from bank panics is a collapse of the money supply, then the proper response is a general injection of liquidity into the financial system in order to prevent a drastic fall in aggregate demand and the price level. The survival of, so general injection of liquidity just means print money. So they have to sugarcoat it, right? Because you're printing money. That's what one of the things the Fed does, right? The Fed does many things. The Fed sets what's called federal funds rates. Federal fund rates is, I believe it's been so long since I had to recall this stuff. Federal fund rates is like a nightly or weekly kind of interest rate between banks. I believe that's what the federal funds rate is. And then it also sets other interest rates on top of that. And then it also prints money through a variety of ways. There's something called a helicopter drop. You guys should look it up. But yeah, the Fed does a lot of interesting things. Let's see, where were we? Well, we're talking about print money. The survival of particular financial institutions is at most of secondary significance. And indeed, those that are already insolvent because of taking on excessive risk, corrupt management, or other reasons can safely be permitted to go under if money and prices remain stabilized. So long as very few banks fail because of a purely liquidity squeeze that forces the selling off of assets at fire sale prices, the damage should be contained. However, if the danger from bank panics is a choking off of credit that reduces either aggregate supply or aggregate demand, then targeted bailouts may be the proper response. Now you can kind of see where like the 2008, 2009 bailouts came from, huh? However, I'm going to read this again. However, if the danger from bank panics is a choking off of credit that reduces either aggregate supply or aggregate demand, then targeted bailouts may be the proper response. Interesting. A general stabilization of the money stock in order to hold up prices will be utterly inadequate if major financial institutions are insolvent. The economy will still suffer from a throttling of financial intermediation, making these institutions too big to fail. Even should contagion effects have no significant impact on money, they might in and of themselves bring about a serious economic contraction. Notice that this view bestows on the financial sector a privileged status that no other economic sector enjoys. Threats to the financial sector solvency are uniquely dangerous to the economy. It's so funny because a lot of you guys love it when we explore this stuff, but we try to use plain English, right? These people who write these articles don't use plain English. It's so funny. How many big words do they use that they don't have to use? You know what I mean? So, anyways, guys, let me read your comments. Let's see who's here in the comment section. Anyone that has any interest in this stuff, let's see what you guys say. So, oh wow, nobody's. It's not like the previous live stream we did, man. The previous live stream we did, we had so many people talking, but again, that was more of like news articles that we explored, right? This one is a little bit more complex. So, yeah, I don't. If you guys don't have anything to say, it's okay because obviously, it took me years to read this stuff, right? And so, I obviously put it off because I know it's very dense. So, Bernanke did not make these policy implications explicit in his scholarly writings, nor did they necessarily follow from his focus on the credit channel. As George Selgin points out, who the heck is George Selgin? Who the heck is George Selgin? They like mention someone without explaining who he is. Like, this is really bad writing, man. This is really bad writing. Who the heck is George Selgin? Usually when you introduce someone, people don't know. You got to say who he is. Let's see who George Selgin is. George Selgin. He's an American economist. He's at the Cato Institute. Okay, yeah. So he's I see. Yeah. He's I would call him, like, if you can imagine Ron Paul, he's like a Ron Paul clone. So yeah, that's who George Selgin is. As George Selgin points out, George Selgin, Cato Institute. The Cato Institute is not, they don't like monetary policy. You know, they like free markets completely. So as long as some banks are pre-run solvent, a sufficient dose of base money should suffice to keep these banks afloat. And in the presence of an efficient interbank market, would do so even if the dose were administered via the open market. That is, through the Fed's purchase of Treasury securities or federal agency issues on the market. Friedman and Schwartz took for granted that the same base creation that would have sufficed to maintain M2 would also suffice to maintain the flow of credit, though not without allowing some perhaps substantial change in the bank's credit market shares. The mere change in credit market shares itself needn't entail any credit channel effects, and therefore no fall in aggregate intermediation. It was left for the British monetary theorist Charles Goodhart to extend Bernanke's analysis into a rationale for targeted bailouts. He concludes it is necessary to keep specific banks afloat, mainly because rebuilding relationships between borrowers and lenders takes time, so that financial intermediation can be impaired even if the central bank preserves aggregate liquidity. Human relationships, right? Something that sort of, it's hard to model in the traditional realms of economics. This could even fall into behavioral economics, rebuilding the relationships between borrowers and lenders, right? That's got some behavioral economics in it. Anyways, nonetheless, we can see more than a glimmer of Goodhart's argument in Bernanke's 1983 article. Both believe that what distinguishes banks from other financial intermediaries is not merely that deposits are used as money, but also that banks, in Bernanke's words, specialize in making loans to small, idiosyncratic borrowers whose liabilities are too few in number to be publicly traded. Because bank loans are especially unmarketable, a bank collapse interrupts the flow of funds more than the insolvency of other financial institutions does. Interesting. I like this. Huh. So why are bank loans especially unmarketable? I guess that is the... Anyways, wasn't the whole issue of the 2007 2006 financial crisis was that they were taking all these little things and putting them together, basically collateralized, right? I think that's the right word. Anyways, it doesn't matter. We'll keep going. Bernanke concedes that some of the slack might be taken up by the growing importance of alternative channels of credit. But in a world of transaction costs and the need to discriminate among borrowers, these shifts in the loci of credit intermediation must have at least temporarily reduced the efficiency of the credit allocation process. It is no giant leap from Bernanke's claim that commercial banks in general are uniquely vital to financial intermediation to Goodhart's suggestion that some banks in particular are vital, especially if they are very big. Moreover, Bernanke clearly reveals in his original American Economic Review article that he considers direct government aid essential for the survival of certain forms of lending. To the extent that the home mortgage market did function in the years immediately following 1933, he writes, it was largely due to the direct involvement of the federal government, besides establishing some important new institutions such as the FSLIC and the system of federally chartered savings and loans. The government readjusted existing debts, made investments in the shares of thrift institutions, and substituted for recalcitrant private institutions in the provision of direct credit. He goes on to state that similar conditions obtained for farm credit and in other markets. Thus, it seems safe to say that the financial recovery would have been more difficult without extensive government intervention and assistance. That's pretty interesting. I don't know how much Bernanke's predecessor Greenspan would have wanted so much government intervention, but it looks like, at least from this analysis, Bernanke was quite when times hit the fan, when I don't know the S word hits the fan, the government has to step in. The dividing line between Bernanke's and Friedman's different policies can sometimes be hazy. The failure of a single large bank can, in theory, set off a panic that causes a monetary contraction. Thus, Friedman and Schwartz imply that the Fed might have done more to shore up the Bank of United States, to whose failure in December 1930 they attached special importance in spreading the Great Depression panic. Scholars still debate the extent to which banks succumbed to insolvency rather than liquidity problems during that episode, and Friedman does endorse deposit insurance as a cure for bank panics. But Friedman and Schwartz's central complaint about Fed operations during the Great Depression is that its expansion of the monetary base with open market operations was too little and too late. aka what I was talking about in the beginning, monetary policy was too tight. Indeed, Friedman contends in Program for Monetary Stability that central banks can dispense altogether with making loans to individual banks through discounts and rely exclusively on open market operations. Among other benefits, he believes this reform would prevent the widespread confusion between the monetary effects of monetary policy, the monetary effects of how do economists come up with this language? The effects on the stock of the money and the credit effects, the effects on recorded rates of interest and other conditions in the credit market. One objection to Friedman's remedy for financial crisis comes from Keynesian economics, of course. With their focus on fluctuations in money demand, in other words, velocity shocks, as the main source of business cycles, they have argued that the demand for money can become so elastic, you can think like changeable, that no increase in the money stock, no matter how large, can offset the fall in output and employment. This situation is infamous Keynesian liquidity trap, possibly prevailing during the Great Depression or even currently, in which firms and households end up hoarding any new money. Friedman himself believes that severe changes in a velocity were caused by volatile monetary policy, and that so long as money growth remained constant, velocity would change at a fairly predictable and stable rate. But it is Bernanke, with unintentional irony, who offers the definitive refutation of the liquidity trap. He points out that through what has misleadingly come to be called quantitative easing, talk to a libertarian, he hates that word. a central bank can ultimately buy up everything in the entire economy, except that sometime before it has done so, people will certainly start spending. This argument earned him the sobriquet Helicopter Ben. What is crucial for our purpose, however, is that the bank panic that causes a drastic decrease in such measures of money as M2 and M1 stem from an increased demand for currency and reserves, the two forms of base money. In this case, a fall in the broader money stock and a fall in the velocity of the monetary base are exactly the same thing, and they become alternative ways of describing what happened during the Great Depression. Indeed, once the banking panics were all underway, the Fed did start expanding the supply of base money, but not enough to counteract either the fall in the broader monetary supply or the fall in base velocity. However, we choose to describe what was going on. Thus, whether we label a particular decline in aggregate demand a monetary shock or a velocity shock can depend on how broadly or narrowly we define the monetary shock or the money shock. It's so funny. This sentence has the word monetary shock that's different from money shock. Jeez. Although Friedman's primary worry is monetary shocks, the internal logic of his position requires a central bank response to velocity shocks as well. He even implicitly accepts this equivalence when, in a Wall Street Journal op-ed, he applauds Alan Greenspan's deft offsetting of the M2 velocity bubble of the mid and late 1990s. If you remember the mid to late 1990s, what was that? That was the tech bubble, right? The dot-com boom, as they say. So a lot of people would blame, so this is me commentating, this is not me reading. A lot of people would blame Alan Greenspan because he basically just kicked the can down, right? He sort of saved the economy from the dot-com bust, but he kicked the can down and then through his monetary policy created the housing and the CDO and MBS, all that crazy stuff that almost took down our economy, the world economy in 2007, 2008. So I guess we're going to, I don't even know if I'm going to read the rest of this. Maybe we'll do another, like a part 2 or part 3 or something. We'll read the rest of this. But obviously you can tell this is a very dense reading. And in college, I would have probably read this in 2 hours. But obviously you're not doing this for an assignment, right? You're trying to do this to understand. So sometimes you need to really think about this before you keep reading. But the reason I mention this is because they're going to talk about Greenspan next, since they alluded to him right now. So we'll just finish this one little section and maybe we'll just call it for now. Anyways, anyone tuning in, thank you so much. It's been really fun the last time I did a live stream where I just explored something in social science that's worth exploring, right? The world's going a little crazy. And I think back when I was more active on this channel, I think we all knew that, like, we all saw the world was at a weird tipping point, man. And I think it's tipped and we're not going back. It's really sad. But anyways, the only thing I can do as a person that likes to use his mind is I just want to keep learning. And if you guys want to learn with me, please do. Offsetting negative shocks to money or velocity, that is stabilizing the growth rate of M times V in the equation of exchange. Okay, we gotta look this up. What is the equation of exchange? Equation of exchange economics. Let's see. M times V. Equation of exchange. Okay, there it is. I remember this. I do remember this now. Now that let me show you guys this real quickly. So this is called the equation of exchange. So money supply times the velocity of money equals the average price level of goods during this time period times the index of the real value of all aggregate transactions. So it looks like a lot of the debate in this reading is probably about this equation. And then so then you could restate this as, so this is another way of interpreting. So again, remember I told you guys about price, right? Prices are very important in economics. So again, guys, don't worry about this if it's you can't understand everything. The truth is, I don't even think these economists understand everything they're talking about, right? That's why one, it's a field that people go into, but two, why the world's so screwed up. These people don't even understand half the stuff they're doing. So just remember that if you don't understand, it's okay. The people in power don't understand either. It's just we don't we don't know how to learn ourselves, so we just put our faith into these people who don't understand. Anyways, I think within the next 20 years in America, I can still say that. Maybe in 20 years, I'm going to have to take this back because, that's how they slowly strangle free speech, right? But within the next 20 years, I can still criticize the government like that. Offsetting, yeah, so we're talking about MV, general injections of, let's see. Yeah, whatever. Whatever. I think this is good enough. We dug into this, and we will. Give me 1 second, guys. Yeah, we dug into this, so I think this is good enough. Sometimes if it's too dense, it might become a double-edged sword, right? It might bore some of you. So, anyways, explored a lot of stuff, and I might link some of this stuff in the description so you guys can look it up yourself if you guys want. I guess I should find aggregate demand too. I should find that aggregate demand. So if you guys want to read up, I'll put this in the linked. Yeah, I'll put this in the links in the description so you guys can look this up if you guys want. But okay. Anyways, oh my god, nobody in the comments. Not last time when I did this, there was like so many people talking in the live chat, but I guess obviously this is much denser reading, right? So no worries, guys. Next time I do one of these live stream explorations, I'll read more news articles like we did last time. So that should be fun. All right, guys. We will talk soon, man. This was extremely fun. Thank you guys so much.